Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming today. We're really excited to have you all here today. This gathering today is part of our Citizen Action Sector. We convene this on a monthly basis. You all are invited to come out and speak with city officials, community leaders to talk about issues. We bring residents in, and this meeting today is all part of that. We think it's very important to try to get as much information out to the electorate as possible. Thanks for coming, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Bill. Thank you.
Well, again, I want to thank everyone for coming. My name is Bill Baker. I'll be the moderator for the event this evening. And what we're going to do is open right up with 2-minute introductions. And we'll start here with Mr. Ramey and just go around. The question that was posed on that 2-minute introduction is something to the effect of what skills and past experience do you bring to the position, as well as introducing a little something about yourself. Mr. Ramey, and folks, you're welcome to step up to the podium or do it from your seat for the introductions at least. I think when we get into the questions, it'd be nice to have the microphone in use.
Thank you. I am Dave Ramey. I am currently the Human Resource Director for the City of Mansfield. I have been a city employee since 1993, and since 1996 as a full-time employee. Most of that time has been spent in the Law Director's Department from 1993 to 2011. I spent a lot of time, or half that time, in the criminal section, running the criminal section, and I spent the other half of the time as the Law Director. I believe that I bring commitment to the job, I bring dedication to the job, I bring impartiality to the job, and I bring fairness to the job. And the reason why I say all those things is, first of all, I've been a full-time public servant for the last 23 years. And my dedication to the job, I don't think there's anyone can argue that I'm not dedicated to the job, that I spend 40 hours a week or more at the job. And I learn all the aspects of the job. I try to understand what the secretaries do. I try to understand what the assistants do. I try to participate in those functions, and I do the day-to-day functions of the job. Impartiality, I've worked with 4 separate administrations, actually 3 separate administrations with 4 mayors. The first job I ever had out of high school was working for Ed Meehan when he was the Director of Regional Planning. And I worked for him for a summer, so I include him into that mix of working for public officials. Two of the 3 public officials that I've worked for, mayors and administrations. Turn it off, that's right. I have been Democratic administrations, one of them is the current Republican administration. I've been able to work with anybody and everybody in my mind, and can do that. I'm fair, I'm across the board, I treat everyone the same, I look at everyone as the same. Thank you again for, and ask for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me to turn the volume off. Yeah, I forgot to announce that. Yes.
Well, good afternoon, and first of all, I would like to thank NECIC for inviting us candidates and having this opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Phil Scott. I'm a candidate for re-election as president of Mansfield City Council. Pretty much a lifelong resident of the city of Mansfield, lived here most of my life. Had the opportunity to raise my 2 children here, David and Sarah. They were products of the Mansfield City School District, graduated from Mansfield Senior High School, and proud graduates of The Ohio State University. I know. But I was elected in 1988 to the Richland County Clerk of Court's office, a position I held for 17 years. Worked a total of 30 years in that office, and brought leadership into that office. ran a good office, was always under budget. Matter of fact, sometimes even through our title administration fund, was able to give money back to the county general fund. In 2007, I was elected president of Mansfield City Council, and as many of you know, shortly thereafter in 2008, this country and this area came upon a great recession. Consequently, the city went into fiscal emergency. By statute, I served on the State Fiscal Watch Commission, and through that commission and efforts of city council and administration, we were able to come out of fiscal emergency about 2 years ago. We continue to struggle with finances and budget, but I think that's something that we have to keep our eye on so that we don't repeat the past and go back into spending money that we don't have. Just kind of in closing, I would like to say that I'm proud to be a Mansfield City resident. I'm proud of my over 40 years of government service and want to continue service as your president of Mansfield City.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everyone for being invited here today. I'm John Spahn. I'm the law director for the city. I was elected in 2011. And when I took office, I must say that, in my opinion, the then existing law director's office really was a disaster. Since then, what I've done is I've inculcated respect and camaraderie amongst my personnel. I've reassigned responsibilities so they have primary and secondary responsibilities. I've hand-selected to maximize the skills of each of our individuals. And in the last 4 years, I think that I can say respectfully and humbly that I think my office and my administration has broken every record that ever existed in the history of the city of Mansfield from a law director's office. I was endorsed by our police, the FOP. The FOP have known Dave Ramey, who I do respect, and they've known him because they saw him in office as a law director for several years. They've seen me function as a law director for several years, and they endorsed me, and that endorsement was unanimous. Every single vote was a vote for me endorsing me as the future law director with the consent of the people. I will say this, that I think that when you serve in public service, I believe that we should care about the poor, the powerless, the socially unacceptable, and the ugly. We have to have a heart for people, to reach out. We are to serve the public, not to rule the public. We are to help the citizens, not take away from the citizens. As long as I'm law director, I will fight for what's right, I will fight for the poor, and I will continue to stand up. It's not an issue of being a nice guy, it's an issue of doing the right thing. To be a strong law director, I would have never let the city fall into financial emergency. I would have told every elected official, you cannot, you will not, and you shall not spend money you do not have. Thank you very much.
When you took your seats, you will notice there's an index card there. And those are for questions that you would like to be asked of the candidates in the last portion of today's event. And if you have a question that you sincerely want answered and we are not able to get to it, what we would like you to do is put your name and phone number on that card as well, and we will make sure that it gets to the appropriate candidate after the forum is open. And I'll point out Kizzy. She is the person who, I know, she raised her hand, only so I would mention that she would collect the cards. Kizzy is an employee here at NECIC and is the driving force behind the event tonight. She organizes the Citizen Action meeting, and she's the one who did all the PR, arranged the candidates. So thank you, Kizzy, very much. So you can just raise your hand. Oh, go ahead, Kizzy.
Yeah, and if you do have a question, just raise your index card up and I'll be around to grab it.
Because of time constraints, we have to ask that you write the question out, and we appreciate your willingness to do so. Go ahead. Mr. Mount.
My name is Michael Mount. I'm a candidate for 6th Ward City Council. At first glance, some of you might think I'm too young to even vote. I must admit that I am young enough to be my incumbent's youngest grandson. That said, there comes a time when it benefits a community to look to the future. We must keep this town a safe, enjoyable place for our elderly, but we have another generation rising. The opportunities look bleak for the young in our community. All too many have turned to drugs. Many of the rest have headed off to the bigger cities for the promises they hold. We need to make this town a great place for the young entrepreneurs like myself to succeed. There are many aspects to that, but high on the list are creativity and activity. If we hope our town lasts more than a few more decades, we need to begin to look to the future with an unending vision. I love this town, especially the 6th Ward. Too long, we've been content to be the last and the least. We've had a nice but relatively quiet representation in the city. We have a dilapidated industrial area and rising blight in our residential communities. It's time to put the 6th Ward back on the map of the city. But let's not stop there. Let's put Mansfield back on the map. With God's help, all things are possible, so let's leave behind the bleak outlooks and rise as the greatest city in the greatest country on the planet.
Good evening. My name is Marvel Blackwell. I'm a candidate for 2nd Ward City Council. And again, I want to thank Bill and Kizzy and, sorry, I forgot your name. Never forget the boss's name.
Mr. Howard.
Mr. Howard, thank you so much for letting us come down and speak, get out before the citizens of Mansfield. I really appreciate it because myself, this is my first run for public office. And it's nice to get in front of people and see, just experience the process. So, I'm married to Kim, the real pretty blonde in the second row. And we have 2 children, and they've blessed us with 6 grandchildren. I'll tell you a little bit about me. My faith is very important to me. I depend on my faith and decision making. Kim and I are active members of Berean Baptist Church. We lead small groups. I've been on mission trips. And those are the things that we consider foundational in our life. I'm a almost 33-year member, employee at the GM plant out there. And during that time, I served on our shop committee, which my job was to work with management and to craft an agreement. And if you remember in the mid-90s, I can't take credit for what happened in these last few years. So at any rate, in the mid-90s, we crafted a highly competitive agreement. I always try to keep management's needs in mind. My thoughts were, if we don't keep work coming and do things competitively, then you weren't going to represent too many people. So that's what I did. During that time, I served on the Richland County Employee Participation Council, and as some of you may remember, that was a board solely for promoting cooperative union management relationships. I see John Marvar here, he's a management guy out there. And I currently am a realtor with Herring Realty. And I'm getting the red light, so I need to get out of here. I will say before I quit, I've been on the board at the credit union for 9 years, so I understand business and labor. And I appreciate the opportunity to serve 2nd Ward Council.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Garnetta Pender, and I am presently the 6th Ward Council person, and I have lived in Mansfield for 55 years, and I'm the mother of 3 children. My husband passed away 7 years ago, and I took on after retiring from the Board of Election after 22 years of service there, I took on the option of running for office and representing the 6th Ward. I've always been interested in the city of Mansfield, even though I wasn't born here. It is where I have lived most of my life. And my heart is focused on our youth. And I'm this first round as a council person, when I was elected, we ran physical emergency. There wasn't any funds available for anybody, anywhere, so whatever. So I did not mention anything about having a community focusing on our youth. But my heart is set on our youth. We talk about we want Mansfield to increase, we want Mansfield to grow, we want industrial to come to Mansfield, we want this and that for Mansfield. But we need to start with our youth in order for that to happen. We need to take them at a young age and start teaching them and directing them, getting them educated. And another thing is our education system. We have a wonderful city school system here, and we need to stand behind that as city elected officials. We need to support the Board of Education. We need to support our school system. And that is how Mansfield is going to grow. If we don't start at the bottom and bring it to the top, it's not going to happen. We can't keep cutting off the top and expecting the bottom to grow. We got to go to the root of the problem. And the root of our problem is for getting our youth focused. My tenure at as a council person in the last 4 years, I was there to help us come out of physical emergency. We did quite a bit of demolition in our area. Just one more thing. Thank you. I am very happy to serve the 6th Ward. I love the area that I'm in. I love the city of Mansfield, period. And I hate to say this, but I have to be leaving. I have another meeting that I have to be at 4:30, which was set up 2 months ago before this meeting was established. And if you have any questions for me, please give them to Kizzy, and I will get back with you with any questions that you have.
Wonderful.
Good afternoon. I thank you all for being here, and I thank you for the invitation to NECIC. Our questionnaire asked us to explain our experience, our knowledge, and our perspective. And I have been on the Mansfield City Schools Board of Education for the last 4 years. I currently serve as the president of the Board of Education. I have been the president for the past 2 years. And I have worked very diligently with our superintendent and trying to align all of our goals for our Mansfield City Schools. We have had quite an uphill struggle. We've been in fiscal emergency, and I've worked with the superintendent and all of the administrators and community leaders to realign some things. One of our major projects was realigning the structure and the development, as well as the working everyday use of the Springville Learning Center. And I'm sure most of you have been out there to visit. If you haven't, please do. It's an amazing facility that is part of our Mansfield City Schools, and we are very proud of that. My knowledge, I have gone through a lot of training through OSBA, the Ohio School Boards Association, and I strongly encourage all of our board members to attend those because it does strengthen us as board members. My perspective is Mansfield City Schools has a wealth of information, resources, and educators, and we need to stand behind our educators who work so diligently on educating our children, preparing them for the future. And they should have paths that include either the military, higher education, or the workforce, and we need to prepare them for that. We are able to do that, and I would like to have your support this fall. Thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone. I would like to thank the committee for this opportunity. This is my first, my name is Cheryl Weber. This is my first, I guess, foray into the political arena. I just retired from the Mansfield City Schools after 32 years in education in July, and decided that now was my time to run for the school board. I feel that some of my qualifications is the fact that I've not only been a teacher for 22 of those 32 years, but I was an administrator for 10 also. The last 9 years I spent teaching at Mansfield Senior High, teaching social studies, government, and U.S. history. So running for a political office is kind of an extension of what I was teaching my students. I feel that because I have come from education, that I know a lot of things that are on the plate that the board has to address at their meetings what's coming down from the government, testing, our teachers being qualified, the new evaluations of teachers, the idea that our youth needs to see the importance of an education. Having been with high schoolers the last 9 years, they're a wonderful group of people. I thoroughly enjoyed being at that level. I've been at all 3 levels. I taught at the middle school for many years, for about 12 years. In my administrative years, I was at the elementary level, so I've seen all 3 levels of education. I am a Mansfield native, born and raised here. My daughter also went through the Mansfield City Schools, so I feel that I've also seen the schools through the eyes of a parent. My parents were born and raised in Mansfield. I don't know why I'm so nervous. I get up in students. I've been up in front of students for 32 years, and getting in front of peers is kind of earth-shattering. So I thank you. I would appreciate your support in November, and thank you very much.
Thank you. We vetted everyone when they came in the door. This is a friendly crowd. No need to be nervous. No.
Oh, thank goodness.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Chauncey Bragg. I am a Mansfield native. I was born and raised here. I'm a class of '93 graduate from Mansfield Senior High. I'm running for the Board of Education. I bring to the table from my military experience, discipline is key. It's important to make sure that we're set programs in place to give our youth something to do. When I was in school, one of the things I did is I started a disaster program with the Red Cross through senior high. And when there was a blizzard or they had to go out and set up at the fairgrounds to do a disaster, I had about 15 students that we all would meet. We'd go out, we'd help them set up cots, everything else. We would run the place for them. They only were required to have 1 staff member there. Us as students ran it. That's something that we need to get back to, is how everyone else is saying the importance of education is key, but we also need to make sure that we're teaching the kids that community is also important. Not only do you need to get educated for yourself, you need to do it for the community. The only way that we're going to be able to improve our community is if we get our kids involved in activities and get them away from drugs and give them something to do that's creative and proactive for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Kizzy has a couple statements to read from the individuals who cannot be here.
This statement is on behalf of Jeff Rock. I believe he's running for 2nd Ward Council. So he says, I regret that I am unable to attend this candidates forum today due to other commitments which I made several months ago. I am a lifelong resident of Mansfield, having grown up on the North End. I love Mansfield, and that is why I choose to raise my 4 children here. I have lived here in the 2nd Ward for over 25 years. I have worked in quality control for the last 18 years, and part of my job is to deal with customers and suppliers, as well as other employees, to solve problems and find solutions. In the 8 years that I have served as 2nd Ward Councilman, these private sector communication skills have helped me solve problems that residents have faced, specifically in the 2nd Ward, but also generally in the whole city. Now I'm nervous. I know. Regarding the greatest problem the city faces, there are all problems facing Mansfield and other cities across the country. I can't say one is more important than the other. To solve poverty, we must continue to look for ways to attract new businesses to our community. We must also nurture businesses we currently have. Regarding blight, one of the first things I did as 2nd Ward Councilman was to secure community development block grants for the 2nd Ward. I will continue seeking such funding as long as I am on City Council. I have also supported legislation that has allowed the city to demolish hundreds of unsafe structures throughout the city with money from the Neighborhood Stabilization Grant and the Pride tax. Thanks, Jeff Rock. This statement is on behalf of Mike Hill. He's running for council president. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to share information about me. So sorry, I will be out of town Tuesday through Friday. Should that change, I will get in touch with you. I maybe should not have read that.
I don't think it's changed.
Yeah, I don't think it's changed. He's married with 2 adult children and 3 grandchildren. He graduated from Mansfield Senior High. He went to North Central Technical College with a degree in computer science, Ashland University with a business administration and computer science, and attended St. Timothy Lutheran Church, and he sings in a choir. Political experience: 10 years as councilman at large and 10 years as first ward council city councilman. Running for city council president. Having 2 remaining years on council. Have always strived to help people, just my nature. Would love to stay on city council and hopefully serve as council president and continue helping people and the city to grow. Community development, bringing jobs to Mansfield and making Mansfield a safer place to live are some of my top priorities. As council president, I will conduct all meetings, caucus, council, executive sessions, and special call meetings in a timely manner, and I will assist the mayor when called upon and would be acting mayor in his absence. So, Michael Hill.
Thank you. Just for my clarification, Mr. Hill is running against Mr. Scott as council president, and Mr. Rock is running for second
ward
council against Mr. Blackwell. Okay, very good, thank you. And that covers our candidates for this evening. We have 2 individuals here that are going to present on 2 of the local ballot issues. I would like you gentlemen to take the 2 minutes to introduce yourselves so we can put a face to your organization and you have an opportunity to really plug the great work that your organization is doing before we get to the 5-minute presentation on the ballot issue. Would you like to do that? Mr. Trolling.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Joe Trolling. I'm the Executive Director for the Richland County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board. Give you a little bit of my background. I'm celebrating my 25th year in the behavioral health field. I am both certified as a mental health counselor as well as an addictions counselor. I like to say I've been with the board for 12 years. I've done about 15 years at the board level, but the rest of the time has been in the trenches working directly with consumers and doing that good work. I've been the executive director for the board now for 8 years. Give you a little bit about the board itself. The Mental Health and Recovery Services Board is your county entity. We are mandated by statute, and we are here to do planning, funding, and evaluation of all publicly funded mental health and addiction prevention, education, and treatment services. It's a long sentence, but basically we are here to oversee what's going on and make sure that we do the best work that we can for the community. We're funded through 3 different streams. We have federal funding, we have state funding, and we have local funding through a local levy, and that's what I'll be presenting tonight. Our local levy that'll be on the ballot in November is a 10-year, 1 mil levy renewal. This is not a new tax, it's not an increase, and it's been in existence for almost 30 years. Thank you.
Matt, would you like to introduce yourself? Mr. Work, I'm sorry.
No. Definitely not Mr. Work. Thanks everybody for having us here. Matt Work, I'm with Richland Public Health. I've been with the health department since 2008, moved to Mansfield at that time. I've been in environmental health off and on since 1974. I have 26 years in public health. As Director of Environmental Health at Richland Public Health, it's been my pleasure to work with one of the best organizations I've seen. They do a great job for the county and for the citizens. And I'd like to talk about our basic motto is to protect the citizens, to prevent health problems, and to promote good, safe health practices and standards. Our environmental health program covers a lot of things. We've worked with NECIC, but we have other divisions like our WIC division. We have our nursing division, which works with communicable disease prevention. And we have our public health nurses that work in the flu clinics, serving our seniors. quite a few other organizations. So basically, what our levy is about is a 0.9 renewal levy, 10 years also. It was originally passed in 2005. No new money, it is a replacement levy. And we appreciate your consideration for our levy. Very good. That concludes our introductions. Does anyone have a question card that Kizzy could pick up at this time? There are a couple. If you just hold that up, she'll come around and get those from you. You know, this is a very important event for me, and I'm very grateful for all the participants, and particularly the residents. You know, many times in the big national races and the national issues, we tend to disregard where our real power as residents is, and that's in local candidates and local issues. So I'm just really grateful that everyone has filled the room this evening, and I know that we're going to learn a lot more about the candidates. It was a great introductory session, and we'll move right into the two ballot issues that will be before us that we need to make a decision on in the next 2 months. Mr. Trolling, once again.
Well, I'm back. All right, well, we'll talk a little bit about the levy, and I'll tell you what the levy supports. Initially, we have 5 contract agencies, and this is where you'll find some familiarity. Our largest agency is Catalyst Life Services, and if you don't recognize that name, you'll probably recognize the agencies they represent. They represent the Rehab Center, New Beginnings Treatment Facility, the Center for Individual and Family Services, Progress Industries, and the Forensic Center. They provide comprehensive mental health and addiction services for both adults and children, including psychiatric services, residential care, and the whole litany all the way down the road. They also provide our immediate crisis services, oversee all of our housing, and provide our vocational services. Our second largest agency is Family Life Counseling and Psychiatric Services, who provide comprehensive mental health and addiction care for families and children using a number of different evidence-based programs. Our third largest is Mansfield Urban Minority Alcohol Drug Abuse Outreach Program, or Mansfield UMADOP, as most people know them by. This is actually our fastest growing program. They provide prevention services for alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. They're also providing mentoring services for some of our high-needs youth that are multi-system involved. They're providing on-site chemical dependency treatment, including medication-assisted treatment right within the office. And they've also spearheaded our effort to establish our very first recovery house in Richland County. Dennis Baker is very proud to be able to say that he's taking homes that were once known as drug houses, buying them up, redoing them, converting them to recovery houses where people that are in after their first year of treatment, moving into these recovery houses to continue on that road to recovery, to establish that first 18 months to 2 years that's so critical. Our prevention services are spearheaded by the Community Action for Capable Youth, or CACY. CACY not only does drug, alcohol, and tobacco prevention, they also provide gambling prevention and are running our very first bully prevention program. They are located in every school system in Richland County. And finally, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI. This is our advocacy agency. They work with family members who have loved ones that have been diagnosed with a mental illness. Many people forget that when somebody's diagnosed with a mental illness, the family suffers right along with them. But many times the services aren't geared towards supporting the families. That's where NAMI comes in. They make sure that the families have a voice, they know what to ask, and they have plenty of information to arm themselves through the process. We also work with 5 other affiliate agencies, including 3C Counseling, the Visiting Nurse Association, the Youth and Family Council, Abraxas, Ohio, and Foundations for Living. These services are funded in whole or in part by levy dollars. Some of the services that make treatment available and are essential. We have crisis services, including a 24-hour hotline and a 13-bed stabilization unit. We have subsidized services for the underinsured, including assessments, crisis services, and case management at no out-of-pocket expense, and a sliding fee scale for other services for individuals that are at or below 200% of poverty. We also have housing. Most people don't realize we have 56 units of independent living in Richland County that are that have people that suffer from mental health and addiction that are living without supervision, paying rent, working jobs, and living in the community. We have vocational training, collaborations with the criminal justice system, community education, school-based services, and these are just scratching the surface of the options that are possible by the generosity of Richland County supporting this levy. For nearly 30 years, Richland County has supported services for those family members, friends, and loved ones that have suffered from mental illness and addiction. In return, we, the behavioral health system, assure that services will be available to all Richland County residents. We also assure that local dollars stay local. The Richland County levy pays for Richland County residents receiving services from Richland County agencies. On behalf of the mental health and recovery services providers, consumers, and families, we hope you'll provide your continued support by voting for the Mental Health and Recovery Services 1 mil 10-year levy renewal so we can continue our legacy of hope and success.
Thank you.
Catalyst.
Excuse me, Henry. Our questions are being written down and submitted this evening, only because of the time constraints.
Okay.
And, I mean, if there's time at the end, we may be able to address personal questions, but we have a schedule that we need to move forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Work? Thanks. You know, the reason why we put the two of you the furthest away from the podium is because you had help.
Because you know we'll bring it on.
In your organization.
I probably can't do justice to our health department in 5 minutes, but I'll try my best. For our citizens in Richland County, I feel our health department is our basic protection. If you think back to why health departments were established, I go back to Amy Schmidt, who is our education and history and historian for health departments. It was because of the 1918 Spanish flu. Until then, we didn't really have health departments. Our health departments have evolved a lot since then. And then we were just looking at basic water, sewer, and trash. Now we're involved in over 70 programs. The support that you give us with the levy actually gives us 75% of our funding for 70 programs. Without your support, we could not continue those programs. There's no way I'm going to go through 70 programs of what all we provide, but I think a lot of you have been touched by them. I know that working with NECSC has been my pleasure to be sort of representative for the health department in doing the community work. The health department is here to work with the citizens and help them. So that's basically our premise for operating. The levy that you passed in 2005, we're asking for renewal. As I stated, does not have any new money involved with it. It does supply about $1.6 million of our budget. And the other thing that most people want to know is how much is this going to cost me a year? If you have a $100,000 value at home, you're talking $32 a year, which we realize is still not small money. But again, I feel that without a strong health department, our community can't have a strong community. Last thing I'll just say is I appreciate your support in the past. We hope you have support in November, and thanks for your time.
Very good. Thank you very much. We did arrange this so that the issues would be presented ahead of time in case you would hear the candidates speaking on topics that would relate to that. We will move into the second question portion of the event. Before we do that, I want to mention briefly that we have voter registration cards on the sign-up table, and I would assume that most everyone that's here is registered to vote, and that's why you're here tonight. But what I'm tasking you with is to please take a voter registration card with you and find a neighbor, a family member, a coworker, or a friend that is not registered. At least have that tool with you to get them registered to vote. Democracy only works when we participate in it. So I wanted to make sure you were aware that we had that available on the table. And I thank you very much once again for considering getting folks signed up to vote. We will move on to the city board candidates once again. And the pre-selected question that we developed, it's kind of a two-part question. We're asking them to select an area from youth, drug addiction, poverty and low graduation rates, blight, and violence, and which topic listed above poses the greatest concern to you, and what is your strategy to address or help to improve the issue? Ms. Rentner, would you like to go first? There'll be 3 minutes for her to respond and for all the candidates to respond.
Okay, this was extremely difficult for me because I think each thing is encompassed in that question. I would make blight and the poverty as well as the low graduation rate my most important things on the table because they encompass the violence, they encompass the drug addiction, and they encompass the youth. And certainly I would look at it as the top to bottom. I would put blight on the top and I would put poverty on the bottom. And it goes into a vicious cycle because if we don't empower our youth, if we don't empower our educators, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get new industry to come here. We're not going to get people to buy into the community. And that's what we need, is people to understand that we're one team. It's not one versus the other. It's one complete team. And I would continue to work with NECIC and all of the other agencies. I know that we've worked with some of the grants that are on the ballot for this fall, that working with our grants operator, Betsy Alexander, is very, very important with making sure that we utilize those services that are available for us. Catalyst Life Center also presented at Mansfield City Schools on our opening day for our teachers, which is really important for them to understand the resources that we have here in our community, understand that they have a lot of tools to put inside of their tool belt so that they can use those to assist our students, to assist our parents. There are some programs that are now available for helping parents because some people have children and they don't quite know how to parent. We're a team though. So for those of us who know how to do things, we should empower and encourage one another to find the way, get them on that right path so that we can continue to educate our youth to get them where they need to be. Because once again, once they leave school, they are going someplace. We don't want them in the wrong places. Sometimes we tell children what not to do, but we don't tell them what to do. So that would be part of my continued plan, is to tell them where they can go, what they can do instead of the unnecessary negative things that they often get into. We want to continue to get them on that path to that success. Wherever that success is, college is not for everyone. The military is not for everyone. The workforce is not for everyone, but there is some place for everyone, and we're here to help them find that way. And that's what I would continue to do. Thank you.
I guess having been at the high school for the last 9 years, the one that really jumped out to me was poverty and low graduation rate, being that close to the students and knowing that, watching students come in their freshman year and be so full of hope, and then all of a sudden something happens or they're not studying, and by the time it should be their senior year, they don't have enough credits, and so they turn 18 and they just leave school. That, to me, should not happen, especially with all the programs and the opportunities that we do have at the high school for our students. But you can't just have them start in high school. It has to start in kindergarten. It has to start in preschool. I think that we have some people, not only parents, but even the community and even some of our students that don't see the value in an education. When I was growing up, we had a lot of industry in Mansfield. There was Tappan, there was the Brass, there was Westinghouse, GM. You could drop out of school when you were 16 and get a 40-hour job and you made a good living. That just isn't possible anymore. You have to have that high school diploma or that GED, but that high school diploma. I just really feel that there are good programs. The Mansfield City Schools have a lot to offer, and somehow, I haven't really figured that one out yet, but to get our students to believe in themselves, but it has to come from the community. It has to come with the negative, unfortunately, image that people have of Mansfield Senior High. Being a teacher there, and people would ask me, where do you teach? Mansfield Senior High. Oh, really? And I would say to them, have you ever been in my building? No. Come spend a day with me and then tell me what you think. We have good kids. We have children that can achieve, but I think we have some that have just been put down so long that they don't think they can achieve. I've watched students that have been given opportunities because they lack that self-confidence, or because at home they didn't want to see them leave and go away to college, that they stayed and they didn't go to college, or they didn't go to a tech school, or they just didn't develop that talent that they have. And that saddens me. Saddens me as a teacher, it saddens me as a parent, as a person in the community. So for me, moving up that graduation rate, not using poverty as an excuse, because I've had students that have risen out of poverty and have gone on and gotten their degrees, or gone on and become very successful people in whatever they've chosen to do. I just really think that there's a lot out there that we have to offer, but I think we need to change the perception of not only Mansfield itself, but of our city schools. Thank you.
Okay, for me, looking at this question, of course, I'm sure you can tell from my introduction, you know, I chose youth. That's one of the biggest things that concerns me is our youth of today. They seem to lack any type of direction or motivation. We need to, as a community, come together. It's the old saying, like my parents used to tell me, it takes a village to raise a child. As a community, we need to come together to make sure that our children are doing what they need to do, what is right. We need to work together. If we can do that, we will see that graduation rates will not be so low, because the children will have something to strive for and work for, because they're not just doing it for themselves, they're going to be doing it for everyone. Everyone who is putting faith in them, everyone who is giving them that drive to go on, that's what they need. And as a community, we need to give that to them. Programs are great, but you know, we have to make sure that the programs are what the children need. We need to make sure that we're using programs and any funding that we get to develop programs that are going to help the children. We don't need to just pacify or put a Band-Aid on a problem. We need to look at a problem and we need to figure out the long-term fix. If we can get a long-term fix, we will see improvement. For instance, you look at the youth, one of the big problems, another one that's on here, drugs. That is a problem that everyone's going to deal with. But education is key, not only through the schools, but through the family, through the community. We need to keep an eye out. We need to be more involved in the community to help the children. You see things going on that shouldn't be going on, that stuff needs to be reported. Not only to the police, but if you know the child's parents, you need to let them know. Because they may have no clue what's going on, because they're working. They may be working 2 different jobs to try and support that family to keep them out of poverty. They might need a little help from the community. That's what we need to do. We need to come together as one, as everyone else has said, and work together to bring the children up to where they need to be, and to get the community to where we want it to be, to help the city improve and get to where it used to be. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all very much. The next segment will be for the law director candidates. And again, we're posing the same question from these areas: youth, drug addiction, poverty and low graduation rates, blight and violence. Which topic poses the greatest concern to you, and what is your strategy to address or help to improve the issue? Mr. Raymond, would you like to go first? Manager? 3 minutes, sir.
When I read this question initially and got the format, it caused me some trouble, simply because all of these issues, as Brenda said, are intertwined amongst themselves and dependent upon each other. And from a personal standpoint, I think all of them are equally important. However, we have to understand that if I'm looking at this as a candidate for law director, The law director's position has very little control or input or insight into any of these issues, and I think that it has to be understood, and I get this question often, what is the law director? The law director the law director simply is the city's attorney. He represents the city in either criminal actions that are pending in municipal court for an area larger than the city itself. In fact, the criminal court jurisdiction for the law director's office encompasses all of the unincorporated area of Richland County, save and except 6 townships in the northwest part of the county, and that's in Shelby's municipal court. Handles all misdemeanor citations that involve the Highway Patrol, the Sheriff's Department, the City Police Department. It also has a civil division which is in charge of representing 14 elected officials. There are actually 15 elected officials, the law director being one of them, but our job is to represent the other 14. That includes the court system, that includes the law department itself, that includes the finance department, the mayor. The mayor alone has 21 departments under his control. The city has 460 employees, or a little more than that. The law director's job is to represent and defend those employees and those officials in the legal actions and matters that involve the city on a civil level. So I would say that to address these issues, the law department and I would see that the issues of blight, we can, in the law department, can assist community development and the other departments that are involved in demolitions, including the Richland County Land Bank, to expedite this situation in seeing that blighted properties, from a legal aspect, are expedited or actions are taken against them fully and completely on a quicker basis. Violence is an issue that can be dealt with in the municipal court scenario from the aspect of domestic violence and an advocate, which the department has had for years, and assist domestic violence victims. Drug addiction, drug issue is a huge problem in this county. It's a huge problem in this city, and it's one that starts on the lower levels, as most things do. If you can address those issues from a prosecution standpoint, again, you have to understand this, that the law director is only a link in the chain, and it has to work in concert with a bunch of other people to get the problems accomplished and the goals achieved. Can't do it by himself or herself. Thank you.
I have chosen drug addiction in youth as what I think is the most critical problem that we have. In my background, I've been a trial attorney for 42 years. For 16 of those years, I was an assistant county prosecutor, where we dealt with the most horrific of crimes, anywhere from rape to all kinds of drug cases to homicides of every kind. I've argued before the Ohio Supreme Court on 2 occasions. Both of those cases were occasions where I had to argue for the death penalty to be imposed and exacted upon those who committed horrific crimes. But I disagree with my opponent in terms of taking the position that the law director is just a link or part of a chain. I think a law director should be a leader. We are to prosecute to protect society, not necessarily primarily to punish the defendant. In the manner in which my office operates right now with our Victims of Crime program, unlike what occurred in the past, I not only want to know what's the situation of the victim, but I want to know what's the state of mind and problem of the defendant. They may have children. Our goal is to protect the victims, but also to find out what is the problem. My background of being a Bachelor of Science in Social Work from Ohio State, I've never forgotten my social worker values. I've never forgotten also my personal faith. And that is, what does God require of thee, O man, but to love mercy, do justice, and walk humbly with our God. And that means that we can change a community. We can solve problems. One proposal I'd have is that we and I've been talking with judges about this. Many of you know my twin brother, the juvenile court judge, Ron Spahn. But I think we should change the criminal justice system. For far too long, if you're a parent and you have a 19-year-old that's on drugs, the parent says, I can't go to the police because they'll put him in prison. I think we need to develop laws that a parent can go and talk to law enforcement and to the prosecutors that says, look, if I turn my son in so we can get him help so he won't die of heroin, so he won't commit crimes, I don't want charges brought against him. We want to help him at that time. So we give the parents a choice. So we give the children a choice. No matter how highfalutin prosecutors can be, to say, well, we're going to prosecute to punish. Well, I say we should prosecute to protect and to solve the problems. And if it hasn't worked for the last 25 years, then we need to change it and try something different. And eventually we're going to be faced with that anyways. Our prisons are filled. We need to solve the problem now in our community. Not just be a link, but to be a part of a whole change working together. Not to give up hope that we can't solve the problem, but to say we can. And I know we can, based upon my experience over the last 42 years as a prosecutor and trial attorney. Thank you.
As a great tool and a great methodology for improving the community. Blight, workplace development, drug addiction, so many of the things that the candidates are talking about. It was a trick question. We developed it from our mission statement. We're very knowledgeable about the issues facing our community, and so thank you for doing your best to lump all of that together or to choose one area because they are all affecting us in some manner as individuals. Now we'll move on to the city council candidates, and I think we will start with the top office, if you will, and sequentially through the wards. So, Mr. Scott, you've got your opportunity to answer the same question, and I'm not going to repeat it because you heard several times. Got it in an email.
We're good. Boy, I too, when I got those, I was like, oh boy, where do you go? Which one do you choose? And it's like, they're all so vital and so important. But I chose blight because I think blight leads into a couple other things. And you know, over my course of 8 years on city council, we've probably approved over hundreds of demolitions. And you know, it goes back to kind of my opening introduction. I grew up in this town, you know, was born here 60 years ago, okay. And I remember when, you know, you didn't have all the blight. You didn't have the torn down houses and the empty buildings and stuff, you know. And it really gets in my heart to drive around this town and see it. And it goes in a lot of different directions. One is, you know, crime, the violence. Not only these abandoned homes, not only do you as neighbors and friends not like to have them across the street or next door to you or drive around the town that you're proud in and see them, but you know, these are places where possible illegal drug activity is happening, where things are happening that we don't want in our community, and that is one reason to get rid of them, abandoned structures and buildings. The other is economic development, job growth. You know, as businesses come to our town and drive around and possibly want to build a factory here, if they drive around town and see all these abandoned homes and properties, are they going to want to come here? So is it the root of everything? No, but I think a lot of different things stem from that. And safety, you know, how many times have we heard that these abandoned homes have caught on fire and damage has been caused to surrounding buildings and stuff? So I just really think that the blight, the abandoned properties and buildings are a place to start. Is it the begin all, end all? No. But I think it's one place that we can start to maybe bring Mansfield back and have the pride in the future that we should have. Thank you.
Thank you. Second ward?
Up second ward.
Yes. We'll move it. I like to count one. Keeps my mind in the right direction. So Black.
Oh, thank you. He threw us a curve, didn't he?
Yeah.
Down the road and messed me all up.
You have to watch out for my method, my methodology.
I got you. You know, it's kind of ironic, just about everyone here had the same thing, starting with Brenda. You know, as I looked at this, I looked at immediately poverty and low graduation rates popped out to me, because we do see how everything else, and you know, is it the chicken, is it the egg? You know, did I get in poverty because I didn't have a good education, or did I not get a good education because I live in poverty? But as I researched some of this preparing for tonight, there is just a lot of information out there that says children that are growing up in homes in poverty have just exponentially larger percentages of dropout rate.
That's right.
The fact is, if a child cannot master reading, so what I want to say is, at least let's talk about an issue, a solution to this, and because we've heard all the other things, and I just don't want to repeat that, but if a child is not proficient in reading by 3rd grade, he has like a 33% chance of not graduating. And that's huge. And I just out of curiosity today, Brian Gardwick and I graduated together, and I was going to Mansfield Senior High site, and I was going to look him up and say, hey Brian, what do we got going here in Mansfield? Well, while I was there, I was on their website. They got a really cool website, by the way. And sure enough, there was a link about some kids in senior at Mansfield City Schools. They were younger kids, and maybe some of you guys know about this. They had made a video about that, and these kids were asking their parents, help me learn how to read. And WKYC TV network picked up on it and used it up in Cleveland. But that just tells such a story. So right there, so what can we do as city council? And I just think we would need to, whatever, not being on city council, I don't know what all is available for us to reach out and help. Down to a local level, a church level. My wife and I, right in the 2nd Ward up here at Kingdom Grace Fellowship Church, this is exactly catty corner from Prospect School. You guys know where that is? There's a church there on the corner. We volunteer was Tuesday night last year, this year it's going to be Wednesday night. But we go down there, and the principal there and the teachers identify the children in the 2nd and 3rd grades that are having trouble reading, and see that they're struggling. And they pick those, and they're all 2nd and 3rd graders, how ironic. And so they come over there, and we have a meal for them. And then we help them read their lessons, do homework with them, and then have a little story with them. So I'm red lighted. But anyway, there's some good practical ways that I think the city could adapt into another area, like maybe Culver Reading Center at O.C. Hill. A lot of good things. Reading is huge.
And I guess we saved the best for last.
Thank you.
Say that.
I could say I take all of these issues personally. As to youth, it's the cornerstone of my campaign. I am a strong advocate for encouraging youth to lead active and productive lives. The young in our community can bring energy and enthusiasm to our neighborhoods, the workplace, the government, etc. This can be one of the community's greatest assets. As to blight, it's all well and good to pass legislation on the topic, but I've taken it further. Through personal investment and hard work, I'm currently turning a rundown house into one of the nicest in my neighborhood. I could speak to each of these issues individually, but I think it's important we address them holistically, particularly when it comes to issues of addictions and violence. We can villainize those who struggle with these issues, but who are we to speak? In their circumstances, would we act differently? Apart from absolute law that is found in the heart of all people, what right would we have to dictate their lifestyle? I believe our community's greatest mistake is rejection of the lawgiver, the creator and sustainer of the universe. Once we were a city known for churches, now we are a city known for crime. Once we were a city known for wealth, Now we are a city clothed in blight and poverty. Once, we were a city of brighter tomorrows. Today, we are a city with countless opportunities to fail. Mansfield can rise again, but the choice is in our hands. As I mentioned before, with God, all things are possible. Perhaps the time has come to open the annals of the city's history. On those pages, we'll find many a reference to point us to the key that waits to unlock a greater future.
Well, we are moving along in a wonderfully timely fashion. And I'm really grateful for that, because we had some concerns about all of the candidates and all the moving pieces. And of course, we wanted to be sure that the residents would have an opportunity to interact. So we're getting ready to move into the resident question portion of it. And I want to, does anyone else have a question? And I want to just make a brief mention, because of the poverty issue in particular. I've been fortunate to be involved with organizing several social justice forums and a conference that we held last December. And our key workshop in the afternoon was on poverty. And Cheryl Carter spoke, and the most profound thing she said is that a young mind without nutrition cannot learn. And that has really, really struck with me. And Mr. Blackwell alluded to that. You know, when a young child starts struggling with the learning process and they're hungry, what's more important? You know, and no matter what age you are, when you're living in poverty, an adult, an elderly, or a child, you're at a disadvantage. And so, since we are ahead on time, I wanted to introduce one more member of NECIC who is working on the local foods movement, and just allow her a very brief opportunity to speak about some of the great things the organization and you, Jean, are doing. When Michael was running late, I tapped Jean to introduce the organization. She's like, I didn't dress for it, I'm not ready. I said, you look wonderful, and Michael walked in. But this is Jean Taddy, and she has headed up the local foods initiative here with our small grant program, creating community gardens, but also last year launched a North End Farmers Market, and this year developed what's being called the Teaching Garden. So Jean, I'll give you, John, set that timer on your partner here.
Thank you.
3 minutes.
Thank you very much for this impromptu invitation, and in order to be timely, as all our guests have been, I would invite each of you to grab some information that we have here about our farmers market every Tuesday, 11 to 2. And it's a cool place to have fresh food in what is known as a fresh food desert. But it's also an opportunity for folks to make a little money, because we charge no vending fee. If it's homemade or homegrown, chances are, well, and if it's, legally appropriate to sell, you can sell it. And I mean that in many ways.
Are we watching some state ballot issues pretty
No,
close?
this is like pickles, sorry.
Okay.
You can sell hand pickles in a farmer's market, but you can sell your tomatoes and your cucumbers. So I would love to have you all come and visit us, tell your friends, and also to the subject of poverty and nutrition. We know that folks that use their food stamp card might not always associate themselves as going to a farmer's market, and so to help draw folks to that, and through the help of the Richland County Foundation, we have a grant to be able to double when people use their food stamp cards. Because we feel that people that have low to moderate income circumstances, they still deserve fresh, healthy food and for feeding minds and bodies. And speaking of food, on tomorrow evening, if you like this place so much you want to come back, we're even going to have a potluck and a class on canning and preserving foods, dehydrating in particular. And we'll bring the chicken wings, y'all bring a potluck dish, and we'll have a great time. Because one of the best things we can do to build community, honestly, is eat together, is feed each other. There's nothing like sitting around the dinner table and getting to know your community, so we would really love that. And Bill would know a lot about our new teaching garden on Blessed Avenue, because he put at least 100 hours of sweat equity into helping us shape the place up. It was 3 formerly run-down houses. 1 was taken down by the city, and 2 later came down through the land bank. We acquired these properties and have put up not only garden beds that we've been selling produce right around the corner at Bowman and Springmill, but also just this last week finished a fence and a hoop house, which is an unheated greenhouse, and I can't wait to tell you all about the ribbon cutting ceremony, but we gotta get a few more things in order, get some signs, and you all, everyone here, is more than encouraged to come to our ribbon cutting ceremony. It will be early in October, and might I also say, drive by Blessed Avenue. So it only had 6 houses on it on a good day, and there's only 1 house left, so you've got room to grow. It's right off of Spring Mill. If you haven't been to Blessed Avenue, right off of Spring Mill, Bowman Street. I'd love to talk to you more about that. And thank you for letting me jump in, and hope to see you at the potluck tomorrow.
Jean,
Seconds left.
And thank you all for the latitude to express that. Yeah, I mean, it's so critical, and we've heard that from a lot of the candidates. We can identify problems, but what are the action steps and how are we going to move forward on the solution? And this is just something really amazing that takes place near my neighborhood, so I'm excited to see that as well. Well, let's move on into the resident question portion. Kizzy, would you like to?
Me and Diana are going to ask them a question. So
Okay.
This question is for the law director, candidates, and city council. So what would you do to enable responsible citizens within the city of Mansfield to raise a few egg-laying chickens in their backyards?
Now, that's for all of the council candidates?
Yep, law director, candidates, and city council candidates.
Okay, we will have to limit that answer to about 2 minutes.
2 minutes, that's
per
fine.
person. Is there anyone that wants to take this on?
What was the question again?
What would you do to enable responsible citizens within the city of Mansfield to raise a few egg-laying chickens in their backyard? Anyone?
It's a law-directed question.
Mr. Mount can raise his hand.
Kizzy.
And Mr. Amy, you can go next, sir.
I've been involved with the group here at the NECIC working on developing legislation for this. I think it's a good opportunity, but we need to really need to examine all concerns from the community. It's a very important issue to really take in both sides, and I think it's a good opportunity for citizens as well for increasing local foods and all that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know right now that there is a limit on animals and the raising of animals in the city, chickens being one species of animal. And I've had issues in the past when I was law director with a rooster. The infamous rooster, which was given to a lady for a prescription, and under the ADA, she was allowed to have it, and she had a chicken coop for it, and we had all kinds of issues, but there wasn't anything to address the problem of it, because she had it through a prescription written by a psychologist. And I agree with Mr. Mount that it is something that needs to be explored. It's worthy of being exploring. I think it has to be some serious looking at the issues and addressing the concerns of everyone. I will also indicate that where I currently live, which is where I've lived for 30 years, when I first moved in there, my neighbor raised chickens in her kitchen. And raised them there for quite a while. And that created some neighborhood issues. You have to take everything into consideration. It's a bigger picture than I think what everyone perceives it to be. And it has to be evaluated fully.
Thank you. Very interesting. Any other takers on that?
Well, I'm familiar with this famous rooster in this one neighborhood because since I took office, one of the top priorities that I had was to not be protected on the 8th floor of a city building, shuffling a pencil and writing government letters to people who had problems. My goal was to go out into the community, to see where their problems were, to be in their basements where their flooding occurred, to see what they're struggling with, to be with them on State Route 30 where in the past not much attention was given to a pothole on State Route 30. I considered that a life and death issue, and I was out there. And I took the street personnel there, and I made it a top priority to say, we're going to fix those potholes on State Route 30, because when you're traveling 60 miles an hour and you hit a pothole, I don't want to read in the newspaper that we had a whole family that was killed simply because for the past umpteen years, no one gave a life and death priority to it. On this issue, on these chickens, I'm very open to any possibilities. But every educated person must realize that in our society, we are a democracy with balanced, varied, and vested interests. There are no absolute rights under the Constitution. They're all qualified. So we have to look at what are the pluses, what are the negatives, what are the health benefits to it, what are the potential diseases that could occur, what type of interference do we have with use and enjoyment of property, and all of those things. And I think I would support an election on that issue, a vote by the people of Mansfield to decide whether or not they want chickens in their city, and let the majority rule. Thank you.
Next question, Diane?
All right, this is for Mr. Trillian. Catalyst appears to be a national organization. Bless you.
Thank you.
If that was not part of the question. If that's true, how does it jive with being local?
Well, Catalyst is actually not. Catalyst Life Services, they came about through the merger of the Rehab Center and the Center for Individual and Family Services. These are our two oldest behavioral health agencies in Richland County. Both of them were having some struggles financially, and they found that they were safer together than apart, and have developed into a very large entity. The interesting thing is, I talk about, we see about 7,000 people in Richland County for treatment annually. On top of that, Catalyst alone probably sees about 7,000. About 3,000 of theirs come through private insurance, Medicare, things that we don't track through the board. But despite that, if you look at some of the neighboring counties, there's organizations such as Coleman Behavioral Health Services. They see some 20,000 individuals. Southwest, down in Columbus, they see about 20,000 individuals. Maryhaven has branched out into several surrounding counties. Firelands, north of us, covers 6 counties. To have an organization the size of Catalyst is it's exciting to have in our community, but to look at them as a large organization in the grand scheme of things, they're actually very small. But they are a private not-for-profit. We, as a board, we have a policy, we will not contract for local dollars with any organization that is a for-profit. The only exception we will make to that, and we did this 2 years ago, and frankly, we are not happy we made that decision at that particular time, but we had a very large emerging drug problem, and we were ready to put as many open slots on the table. And we took a couple of organizations in for 1 year that were LLCs. I gotta get my tax code right. There were LLCs that we went ahead and contracted with them. And frankly, we found out exactly what we had thought, that the not-for-profits, when you have that status, the oversight that you receive from government, from other organizations, makes you a better agency. For-profit organizations, I mean, we had one organization that the governing board was mom and dad. So that's not a real good oversight of those organizations. So we have since scaled things back, expanded the other agencies. But it's a great question. The Catalyst seems huge, and in this county they really are. But in the grand scheme of things, they're a great organization to have here. They meet our need, but I definitely wouldn't see them as a national organization.
Sir? Yes. Thank you very much. Is it possible that there is a larger national organization with a similar same name that could confuse this? It seems like I've seen Catalyst used in a number of areas.
Catalyst has been a very popular word, and it was one of the questions that we brought up when they were doing their branding. That's been a popular buzzword, and we are seeing that come up. In this county, we have a couple national organizations, and there are residential treatment agencies on opposite sides of 39. Abraxas, Ohio is owned by GEO, which is a national organization. They have organizations in 20 states in Ohio, or 20 states in the country. Foundations for Living is owned by UHS. They're also a for-profit. We also have no local tax dollars that go into those organizations.
Thank you very much.
This is for council members and law directors. As to helping solve poverty, how has the city block grants changed its perspective towards the North End community?
We'll allow 2 minutes for answers. Member want to take on this?
Honestly, I'm not too familiar with the history.
Question one more time.
Okay, how has the city's block grant changed its perspective towards the North End community?
Like, you mean, the city having a different perception? Is that what you're asking?
From where it started, from where Black Grant started till today, how has it changed?
From my experience on council, I don't really think the perspective has changed. I mean, we're still, giving the money for rehab and demolitions and everything. The big thing is we don't have the money. We're not getting the block grant money like we used to. It's much more limited, as the federal government is handing down a lot less money, so therefore on the local level, we have a lot less to deal with. But as far as how we're distributing, it's not really changed. And council, as different organizations submit their proposal for funding, we still evaluate them on the same process on what they're doing, how they in the past have worked with their dollars. Not only if they've gotten block grants before, but just how has the organization done? Is it been successful? Is this just a one-time thing that they can afford, that maybe the building needs a new furnace? We've had several of those. Maybe a building needs structurally where that organization is. Is this a one-time program that they're funding? But the big thing is we just don't have the block grant funding that we used to be provided by the federal government.
Bill, do you anticipate that to continue to shrink, or will there be some changes where that fund might grow?
I guess, playing the safe side, I would probably see that it would continue in the shrinking.
Thank you.
But that's just my uneducated.
If I may,
Thank you.
I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but speaking, if I were hypothetically the legal advisor to the North End, I would say protect your turf. Make sure you're not losing influence by what you want to do in your community. Not all that glitters is gold. And when you have some that might offer to do things in your community, make sure that you determine who's going to make the decisions in that program, who's going to continue to control that program, and are these going to continue to be individuals that you know you can trust within your own group, your own North End. There's good politics and there's bad. There are well-intentioned changes in bureaucracy and government. But only you know your community better than anyone. Make sure that you ask yourself, if we make a change, then who's in control? Who's running the program? And are these individuals that we approve of? And then, of course, the greatest measure of most programs in terms of future funding is the success of that program. A lot of times one source will close up, another source will open up. But protect your turf, use wisdom, and ask questions before you give your consent.
Thank you. Next question.
This is for the school board folks. Despite the Ohio Supreme Court ruling that funding schools that we fund schools unconstitutionally, we continue to do so. What is the current status of funding that is not based on property taxes?
I can address part of that. As I stated before, there are several grants, especially for Mansfield City Schools, because we are an inner-city school system. We're an urban school district as well. So there are different federal grants. There are local grants that we tap into. So those are some of the resources that don't come from the local tax dollars. And we just have to make sure that we are utilizing them properly to make sure that we can continue to use those grants. Definitely no one wants to see their dollars being wasted, so we have accountability in place. We do have grants operators, and we have people and teams who work together to make sure that those dollars are used correctly and not coming from that general fund. So that's really important, especially right now. We are in the process of hiring a new treasurer for the school district, and that's imperative that this person understands that they need to utilize those grant dollars before they tap into that general fund, which does come from those local tax dollars.
Thank you. Any other comments? I realize she has the advantage as being a sitting member, so
Right,
it's very familiar.
And I guess my concern has always been on that. That was a Dural, case was Dural. That was 13 years ago, I think it was, or more. And our legislators have basically said, looked at this Ohio Supreme Court and just went, we're not going to do it. So I think that needs to be revisited, because after, if I remember correctly, part of that has run out, that decision, and so it's kind of like a moot point anymore. Other states have gone to different funding. They've done away with property taxes, not property taxes, but going to the schools, so they've come up with other ways of funding. But as Rinda said, we do go out there for grants. There are a lot of grants out there. That's one thing I'd like to see us do, is to go for more grants for different programs for the schools, so that the general fund doesn't have to be tapped as often. But yes, it definitely, in my opinion, the lawmaker, not the legislators were the ones that dropped the ball. It wasn't the Supreme Court, Ohio Supreme Court. It was the legislators by not following through on what they were told to do.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and add this next question, because it kind of plays along with that one. And it is directed to John Spahn and David Ramey. And it says, is there any legal pressure the city can put on slum landlords to take better care of properties? Some landlords, not necessarily slum landlords, receive government subsidies, and the house is inspected once a year. All repairs have to be made, but other landlords, slum, aren't accepting government funds. I think they are part of the problem. So the question is there any legal pressure that the city can put on those type of landlords to take better care of properties?
Mr. Randy, do you
No,
want to?
you can go first. If
You don't want to take some of my ideas, do you? Well, it's an ongoing problem. First of all, you have private ownership. It's very difficult to dictate to a private owner what they should do with their own property. There are some communities that have passed very strident ordinances that establish very strict standards that require property owners to do certain things. And sometimes that goes from A to Z. How to paint the home, how to plant and treat the exterior, all kinds of standards. Now that responsibility falls with city council. But the question is whether or not city council would have the political support to pass such an ordinance or an act dealing with ordinances that issue these mandates. So it's a difficult issue. Certainly if somebody has a proposal, they can submit it to city council and ask city council to consider whether or not they want to adopt these proposals. So that's procedurally the way to do it. But the question is whether or not, what's the cost of doing that, whether or not we'll discourage others from being landlords, because I know of many landlords who are doing a good job and who, because of their involvement in purchasing properties and reinvesting in them, they've actually reduced the blight problem, not increased it. So there's two edges of a sword to it. Okay, thank you.
I will take a stab at answering the question. There are a lot of things in place already from a codes and permits standpoint to address issues with housing. The biggest problem and issue the city has, of course, is manpower, or the lack of manpower to make and enforce the codes violations. Codes and permits has 2 inspectors that do housing inspections on a daily basis. And you got the city divided into 2 parts, and they do a lot of driving around and they respond to telephone calls and written complaints, and then they also do drive-bys and notice and see things. It's an ongoing problem. It's one that is going to be very, very difficult to actually address and pinpoint. A lot of the slum landlord scenarios came about when we went into the Great Recession, and there was quick loan money out there, and properties were overvalued, and people were buying them and getting huge loans on the properties and then walking away from them because the properties were extremely overvalued. People from California would come in and appraise the property for $80,000 or $90,000 when it was really only worth about $10,000. And they give a loan for $90,000 and the person would take it, the landlord would take it and walk away and not worry about it. So the city's saddled with those and the demolitions. And that's where a huge amount of demolitions are coming from, is addressing those slum landlord situations. So we're trying to work on them. There is in the city a historic district. There are certain districts where there are overlays, where there are controls on property and how you can paint your house and what it can look like and what it can't look like. Those are already in existence in a couple places in the city. But again, it takes council to make that citywide. Thank you.
This is for city council and law director candidates. What have you done or what will you do during your time in office to address the industrial blight? And how would you hold absentee business owners accountable?
Who was the one's first stab at that?
I'll take it.
Oh, okay, very good.
I think the industrial blight is a very interesting issue, and I think we should take it a little more creatively than we have in the past. There are some communities where they have taken old industrial districts and turned them into something new. I've heard of one in Akron where they turned an old factory, I believe it was Goodyear, into a mall. Just recently, Mount Vernon redid a PPG factory and made it into a park, basically. They call it the Ruins. It's rather an interesting place, I've heard. I think there are plenty of opportunities out there. I think we should look at it as an asset rather than a liability, and we should move forward trying to treat it that way. That's my view.
Very good.
Kind of along those same lines, City Council just did approve legislation for, I believe it was the old Westinghouse building, John?
It was a
Rezoning, approval into an industrial area that could become housing. It was, right now it's escaping me right off the top exactly what area it was, but it was a factory that we rezoned so that it could become residential. You know, if a private business wants to come in, an investor wants to come in and convert that old factory into apartments, God bless them, and, you know, folks that want to live there, God bless them too. And, you know, maybe that's what we need. I mean, I know a lot of our younger generation is moving within the inner city. You know, my generation moved out. You know, they were moving out into the burbs, where a lot of the younger generation is moving downtown. I mean, even in the downtown area up in the Carousel District, you know, I know they're wanting to convert a lot of those areas, those buildings, upper levels, into apartments. So I think as much more of that as we can, you know, if we could, wouldn't that be great to turn the old Westinghouse? I think Dad always referred to it as the H building. I think that's the one building that's still standing, into maybe put shops and apartments and whatnot down there. You know, maybe that's what we need to do, is maybe think outside the box instead of just saying, well, there's that old Westinghouse building that I saw, you know, let's just tear it down. Well, maybe we need to look at inventive ways to use it and look at the younger generation that's moving into the inner city.
When I was elected in 2011, one of the first things that I evaluated was industrial, or what I call commercial blight. I couldn't understand when I was told that the Woodville School had been closed for over 20 years. And people were calling and saying, why isn't this taken down? I can only say, when you vote or consider who you want in office, look at their record and look what they did or have done. I couldn't understand why that building was still there. Within 2 years, I was able to be the principal mover of having that building taken down. And it got taken down. Now I'm looking out of the window from the law director's office. I see the Westinghouse building, and I see the so-called cleanup. And I noticed that it looked like they cleaned up the metal, but nothing else. They left all the debris there. Well, I can say as a law director, I always look at what do people do, not what they say. But when it comes to myself, I'm a person of action. And the first thing I did is I found out who owned it. Some multimillionaire out in California. Then they transferred it to some company in Columbus. And they played shell games with it. Well, I called a meeting and had them all come in and basically said, as far as I was concerned, crimes have been committed here, and unless this gets cleaned up, I'm turning the matter over to the Attorney General for the state of Ohio for a full investigation, and not only hold the principals accountable criminally, but we're going to hold accountable criminally all those who aided and abetted. You should have seen the expression on their faces. So within 6 months, I was able to get the Attorney General's office involved, who I went to law school with, as a personal friend of mine, the Health Department and others, and we had that cleaned up. That's one of the finest cleanups that I've ever seen, and we still are trying to get the boiler house taken down. We're also working to get the old Tappan area cleaned up. Bottom line, what can we do? We can give a priority to it and say, we're going to take it down, and I don't care what administration, mayor, Republican, Democrat, or Green Party, don't tell us you don't have the money. If we don't have the money, then where's our applications for grants? Let's find the money and take it down. That's how it gets done. Thank you.
Any other answers to that question? Next, please.
I have another one for the school board. Please discuss how you would balance the expectation for the school system to meet state standards while still providing a strong, rounded education for our children.
Well, most of those things are not rocket science. It's already spelled out for us. So it's a matter of accountability. We have to hold everyone accountable And that's why it's so important to work with all of the agencies that are available for us, because some people don't know what it is to be accountable. Some people don't know what the expectation is. So it's all of our responsibility to make sure that everyone is well informed. The parents need to know what is their job. They need to know what the expectation is for them to provide for their students. And the educators need to know what is the expectation of them and to whom are they accountable. The administrators need to know, the board members need to know, everyone needs to know what their part is. So it's, like I said, it's already spelled out. We just have to hold people accountable to that, but it has to be accountable for everyone. It can't be for some and not for others, because you open up one little door and you have a strong flow, and it's hard to get that flow back into alignment. So we keep everyone accountable, and that's basically what it is. It's just a matter of following the rules, making everyone follow the rules. That's what it's about. It's doing what we need to do.
Having just come out of the classroom and teaching in 32 years, seeing the change in education from when I first started, when it was the local board decided the curriculum, and what the state had certain things that we had to teach, but it was up to the local board. We put together our curriculum. Then we went to the proficiency tests, and then the state standards were put together, and we went to the OGT test, knowing, again, what we were to teach. And now we're at the Common Core, and we know that the PARCC test didn't work out, so Ohio has decided to not give the PARCC test. I think one of the things that has been frustrating as a teacher is not having a length of time to adapt or having things explained. Unfortunately, the state of Ohio hands us, here are your standards, there you go, with no type of staff development. You go to other states, they hand their teachers, here it is, here's what's spelled out for you, and it's very simple. So, you know, there's that learning curve that as educators, you have to learn with every time the standards are changed. And when they change, sometimes constantly, you're still in that learning curve, and now you've got to change again. Everybody does need to be held accountable, but they are spelled out there for us exactly, this is what you need to be teaching, this is what's going to be tested, and we know that we have to go from point A to point B. And as I said, sometimes it can be very frustrating because you're trying to be creative. You want children to love learning, but on the other hand, you're kind of tied here because so much is based on those tests, which hopefully I would hope to see in the future, maybe not so much testing and going back to that, being able to teach children with joy, you know, having them wanting to learn hands-on. If it takes 3 weeks to cover a particular subject because they're so interested in it, that you can do that and not keep going, ooh, we got to move on because we've got to be down here at this point for the test. But again, as Renda said, we are accountable, and it's now tied into evaluation. So I think the teachers are doing the best they can, but again, everybody has to follow through.
Thank you.
Based on that question, I'd have to say I agree with Ms. Klein. Accountability is going to be key, but I also look at it as the state hands us a standard, and they say this is what you need to do, but there's nothing that says we can't go beyond that. That standard is a basic recommendation for the minimum of the education that the students need to receive. We can always go above that. We don't have to stay there. We don't have to stick to that. As long as we are meeting the requirement, we can also exceed the requirement. So we need to look at what standards they are giving us, the type of education we were giving our children, and determine if that is where we want it to stop or if we want to better prepare them by expanding the standard. Thank you.
We have about 4 other questions over there, but I gave the signal that we'll ask one more, and we're getting close to the end of our time, and we'll have some closing comments.
All right, this
Last
question can be addressed to everyone. We talk about bringing new businesses and hopefully families into town. Since so many schools have closed, what will it take to open more again, especially in the North End?
Well, I think that from a school board member's point of view, it does take the entire community banding together. We have all of the resources, we have all of the people are in place. We need to band together though. We have too many things that are separate, and it's not the North End versus the South End versus East-West. We need to have educational facilities throughout our entire school district, but we have to have the industry. We have to have the development so that we can do those things. We have to have places where you spoke to going into homes that are flooding. We should not have that. We need to fix some of these things that are happening, and that was one of the reasons that we did have to close one of our buildings, is because it flooded. We had thousands and thousands of dollars that were put into boiler systems. Before we could actually use those boiler systems, they flooded. That should not happen. That should not happen. We have so many things that need to be corrected, but each one has to take their responsibility and take care of those things. And when you speak of blight, I don't just mean blight as far as a building. I mean blight in a person. Blight that your light has been put out because you are so poverty-stricken, because you are so helpless and so hopeless. We need to restore that. We need to start there and empower people. It's not about I have all the power. I need to empower you so that you can do what you can do. I need to empower you so that you can do what you need to do. We all need to work together, and that's how we're going to get more buildings, because we bring those students back through their parents, because they don't stand alone. They stand with their parents, with their families, and those families have to go where the jobs are. So we need to bring those jobs back so that we can have more children here to attend those schools, and then give them a reason to be proud, give them a reason to be in our school systems, give people a reason to come back to Mansfield and make it stronger. But we have to do that together.
I second what you
Can we get a consensus?
All right.
Any other comments on that question? Or responses?
Well, it's a question of preserving what a community already has to offer. It begins with preserving home values, preserving our environment. There are a lot of issues in this election year and next year, but the greatest threat, in my opinion, to the future of our city is the issue of toxic poison dumping.
Amen.
I'm the only law director in the state of Ohio, along with my co-counsel, that has successfully warded off the efforts to put a toxic poison waste dump in our industrial park. Now, to give you an example, in Broadview Heights, north of us, that's a community geographically that's only the size of Ontario. There were 87 wells put in that community. Now, this community, our community, passed by over 60% a mandate to elected officials to fight against toxic poison dumping. I have been the law director that has opposed the toxic waste dumping injection wells in our community. And I would submit that I will continue to oppose injection wells in our community. And I would also suggest that, in my opinion, my opponent is being supported by the injection well industry. It is the greatest threat to our community. As long as I'm law director, I will fight to protect our home values, our family health, and the future of our community. Nothing is more dangerous to our community than toxic waste dumping. The question is, which chief legal officer will fight against it or open the way and welcome toxic poison dumping into our community. Thank you.
I gotta respond to that.
I think I was going to move to the point that did not directly address the question on schools, but since Mr. Spahn, you've opened the door, let's allow a couple minutes for closing comments from anyone who would like to speak for a final time. And Mr. Ramey now has the podium.
Thank you. The issue of injection wells, I understand what was done in 2011, 2012. The problem is the Supreme Court has reversed that and stated that injection wells, oil wells, gas wells are all controlled by the State Department of Natural Resources and the State Department of Mining or Division of Mines. It is not a matter that is subject to home rule. It is not a subject that is, or a matter that is subject to control by municipalities beyond the ability to zone out of certain areas injection wells. Cities still have the responsibility and the ability, and have for the last 100 years, ability to zone and create zoning codes. But in a case called Monroe Falls, which had a statute on the books, not a charter amendment, but a statute on the books, very similar to what we have, the state Supreme Court said that you cannot, as a municipality, control injection wells or mines or oil fields or any of those issues through a municipal ordinance or a charter amendment. And it doesn't matter whether you're a charter city or not. And I'm not going to go into that because that's the legal machinations between a statutory city and a charter city. The city of Mansfield is a charter city that has its own charter, but that doesn't mean it can just go willy-nilly and do whatever it wants. It can only go in a direction that the state Supreme Court or the state statutes say that it can. One issue of home rule, which I believe in total, is the city should have the ability to dictate is whether an employee lives inside the city limits. Okay? Now, the state legislature passed a statute.
Excuse me, what's your time?
Sorry.
Just
1 minute.
Actually, sir, we have to give an opportunity to the other candidates if they want a final comment, apparently on any subject.
Closing.
Yeah, this is kind of closing remark.
Well, I don't particularly have a topic, but I guess I would just like to say that, you know, it's been my pleasure to serve as president of city council for the last 8 years, and I would really appreciate the privilege of being given another 4 years. So I would really, really appreciate your consideration for your vote this coming November. You know, I've really enjoyed tonight. I think it's brought up a lot of good discussion, a lot of good comments. And if it's done one thing for me, I think it's one thing that we've got to think about. You know, we sit back and we waller in, well, you know, remember when Westingwood's house was down here and had thousands of employees and happens and whatnot. You know what? We're probably never, ever, folks, we're never going to see those days again. We're probably never going to see those factories. But I think it's brought one thing to light that we need to get out of that, you know, well, Mansfield's never going to be what it used to be. Well, in some ways it might not, but it's still got a bright future, and if we all think positive, we can bring that light, you know, and maybe it won't happen in my lifetime. But you know what, maybe we here today can plant that seed that this city can grow, and once again, it might not be encompass what it once was, but it again can be a great city on the hill. Thank you.
The possibility of serving you on city council. I know I'm young. I know I may lack the experience of my opponent, but I'm creative. I have activity. I have enthusiasm. I'm willing to try to make up for that. I would like to see the city move forward better than it has ever been before. Thank you.
All right, in closing, I too want to thank you guys again, and I just, being my first run of public office, I hope to have the ability and the opportunity to serve the Second Ward City Council, use the experience I've had with other private sector jobs I've held, and decision-making processes, and how to work across the aisle and help work with each other. And I always said I'm not the best idea guy, but I'm a great copycat. And just ask my wife. We look at Pottery Barn and decorate our house that way. But anyway, you know, I want to do everything I can to do what Phil's talking about. And I think there is something. We got to try to get this attitude back. You know, that Mansfield can be, and you don't have people saying like the teacher up here earlier, oh, you teach at Mansfield City Schools. Oh, yeah, I think you said that. Yeah. You know, it'd just be nice to try to plant that seed where, you know, young guys like Mike at some point, you know, or any young people out there that are eager to plant that seed. So I'd like the opportunity to do that. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to thank NECIC for once again hosting this, and I appreciate all the work that you've done with Mansfield City Schools, the ROAR program, all of the different things that you offer, all the things that Catalyst offers, all the things that all of you offer when you come to meetings like this, just showing your support. I appreciate that. I've enjoyed being a public servant for Mansfield City Schools and for our community, and I would appreciate your continued support in another 4 years. Thank you.
I'd like to thank NECIC for this opportunity for my first foray in public office and to meet the candidate night. I would like to ask all of you for your support for me for the school board. I'd like to put my 32 years of public education experience to good use in being on the board. I believe that our youth is what's going to bring Mansfield once again to the forefront. And I want them to have all the opportunities that I think they deserve. All children matter, and they all deserve the best education that we can provide for them. Thank you.
I too would like to thank NECIC for hosting this event tonight and giving me the opportunity to come and get a chance to speak to people. This is my first time running for a public office as well. You guys did a great job. It was a good event. I have to agree with Mr. Scott. Brought up some good questions, some good discussion, some good ideas were thrown out. Now we just need to get together and put some of those good ideas to good use. And like everyone else, I'd also like to ask you for your support for the school board in November. Thank you.
Well, I'm not letting you guys pick all of them. Yes, well, I want your support for the levy, absolutely, but I also want to take my minute to put a little more plug in. The 4th, 5th, and 6th ward in Mansfield has almost 14,000 registered voters. Yet on most November elections, you have about 2,000 people who vote. I would like to see that change. I would like to see the road for any issue to pass or for re-election to drive through north of Park Avenue. So please, not only get people registered to vote, get them to the polls. If I wake up on November 4th and our levy didn't pass, but we had 30% voter turnout in wards 4, 5, and 6, I'm going to be hard pressed to see that as a loss. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for attending this evening. I think it's been a great program, and Kizzy's going to close the
Close us out. And I would like to say thank you all for coming. This was my first time planning a candidates night, and I was extremely nervous and extremely stressed. Thank you. Our executive director when he told me everything would be okay, but I want to thank you guys for making this a successful candidates night. And I do have one comment to you, Joe, that someone gave to me. So our family has been impacted in a great way through the NAMI 2-week family-to-family workshop. It's helped us in relating to our loved one. Thank you for all you do.
I will
And
pass that on to
I
Mary.
So if you want to eat, we have some veggies and some cookies, so grab something before you leave. And thank you once again for coming. Oh, yes. And our next, this is our Citizen Action Sector meeting. I chose to pick this date. We have it every second Wednesday of every month, so if you're able to attend. Our next one will be October the 14th, and it will be another Meet the Candidates night, and it will be those running for mayor of the city of Mansfield. So I hope you all can. So thank you.